Part 1. The allure of the roommate. The hum of the city was a dull, constant drone, but the silence inside my apartment was deafening. It was a perfect, organized silence, the kind that only exists in a home run by two people who are logistically flawless. I was standing by the kitchen counter, tracing the cool marble with my finger, trying to reconcile the life I was living with the absolute chaos of my inner world. My partner, the man I loved, was asleep down the hall, a man who was a perfect person to live with, yet cheated consistently in any way he thought he could get away with it. I was in my mid-20s, he in his late 20s. We had met on Tinder. I had gone into it with zero expectations, just a craving for something casual, maybe a hookup. But the moment we met, something clicked. Our conversation flowed like a river. Our humor meshed instantly. It was a synergy so intoxicating that we quickly decided the idea of just being friends was ridiculous. He, however, wanted a serious relationship. I still remember the conversation early on, when I noticed his large Instagram following. It was a casual moment, a bottle of wine open, the lights low, but my instinct screamed, "Hey, do you cheat? Is there a problem with that?" His eyes met mine, steady and almost regretful. He admitted, "I cheated on my ex a couple times, but it was a reaction to her cheating on me." That line, reaction to her cheating on me. It was a perfect, self-exonerating narrative. It wasn't a flaw. It was a scar. It wasn't his nature. It was his defense mechanism. Bought it. I looked at the man across from me. Charming, attentive, insistent on commitment, and I gave him a chance. I truly fell in love with him, and my loyalty became absolute. I lost interest in everyone else. The foundation of our relationship, however, was built on shifting sand. Less than a month later, the first seismic event hit. He was heading off on a warship deployment. I was anxious, missing him already, texting him constantly while he was at the airport. He was snapping me the whole time, sending pictures of the departure gate, the security lines, the waiting planes, all the sweet routine rituals of a couple parting. But I caught him. I caught him on Tinder. The full horror of the situation didn't just dawn. It exploded. He wasn't just scrolling. He was actively communicating. I found out he was sending me so many pictures around the airport because he was looking for a woman he was going to pay for services for him. He was performing the perfect boyfriend role for me while simultaneously coordinating an act of betrayal. It was calculated, cold, and utterly devastating. The transaction was worse than the sex itself. It was a complete disrespect for our shared time, our intimacy, my trust. Felt physically ill. When he got back, the confrontation was excruciating. I wasn't screaming. I was dead inside. I told him our serious relationship was over. We could just hook up, I proposed, drawing a clear boundary. But you're going to need to get tested regularly, because that's what I do when I have casual partners. To my complete confusion, he resisted. Fiercely. He didn't want casual. He insisted he wanted a serious relationship. He attributed his actions to his past, claiming it was an impulse left over from his previous relationship that he needed to move on from. He pleaded for time. He promised to work on it. The hopeful romantic in me, the one who saw the beautiful synergy in our daily lives, relented. I told myself I could give him the time. I should have left then. But the addiction to the roommate was already taking hold. He was, in the logistics of shared life, the most perfect person I had ever known. We worked very well together. He took heed to what I asked, and I did the same for him. We ran a house together well. We were a domestic machine. Efficient, respectful, and perfectly synchronized. I enjoyed living with him immensely, and I assumed the feeling was mutual. We navigated bills, chores, and schedules with an almost psychic understanding. This synergy, this comfortable rhythm, became my anchor, the weight holding me in place even as the emotional ground crumbled beneath my feet. But the infidelity continued, becoming a chronic illness in our relationship. He was caught multiple times, paying women, messaging them without following through, or simply following women on Instagram and then unfollowing them after I told him he should work on not enabling himself. My role slowly shifted from partner to private investigator. He made it my job to find out he was cheating and to confront him about the cheating. The pattern was always the same. He would lie about all the details, act like he'd done nothing, or basically reserve all comments until I directly addressed him with the evidence. It was exhausting, humiliating, and utterly isolating. The detective work was destroying me piece by piece. One evening, staring at his averted gaze as I presented a screenshot, I knew I couldn't do it anymore. "I am quitting that job," I announced, my voice low and shaking. I would no longer like to do that. I realized I couldn't invest so much emotional labor into forcing his accountability when I didn't see him going the lengths I would to help myself. I tried to understand. I tried to offer alternatives. I was okay with watching porn. I just didn't think he should be wasting our money on paid services. The fact that he paid for sex baffled me. I would initiate a lot. I even texted him, asking him to come home so we could have sex. Yet, he would cheat and then not let his partner touch him when he got home. It was a rejection that felt personal, a choice to seek cold, transactional sex over the warmth and intimacy waiting for him. I briefly considered opening the relationship or cheating myself, seeking some form of emotional or physical release. But my values and morals held me back. It was just not me. The bitterest irony was that when I brought up the possibility, he expressed extreme disinterest in me being with other men, viewing it as a sacrifice of our relationship. His infidelity was acceptable. Mine was a betrayal. He demanded fidelity while consistently sabotaging it. Now we were suspended in this agonizing limbo. When caught, he expressed a lot of remorse, calling his actions just moments of bad judgment. I tried to tolerate it, clinging desperately to the domestic synergy that made our life so comfortable. My own mother, valuing stability above all, said I should stay. But everyone else saw the truth. He expected me to hold him accountable and wasn't making any real effort to stop the infidelity. The truth, the cold, final piece of evidence that shattered my last vestige of hope, was a quiet discovery one rainy afternoon. He had previously offered up proof of his rehabilitation, screenshots of Instagram accounts of women he had unfollowed. But when I accessed his phone, a boundary I'd crossed in my desperation, I found a hidden folder. It wasn't just a folder. It was a vault of lies. Inside were the very screenshots of the accounts he claimed to have permanently removed from his life. He had just saved them to the hidden folder. Even worse, he had a hidden internet browser where he would go to look at OnlyFans and that sort of content. His remorse was theater. His working on himself was a system of better concealment. He wasn't struggling with an addiction. He was operating a deep-cover double life. The man who was my perfect roommate, the master of logistics and domestic harmony, was a completely unsafe space emotionally. The synergy was a beautiful cage. The choice was clear, yet impossibly difficult: to tolerate the agonizing emotional risk for the sake of an amazing life partner, or to break the perfect silent domestic machine and walk away. Part 2. The Art of the Perfect Roommate. The first part of our life was a whirlwind of intoxicating connection. The second was a meticulously choreographed dance of domesticity and deceit. It was a study in contrasts. Outside the bedroom, we were architects of a perfect home. Inside, we were strangers. The walls of our apartment weren't just plaster and paint. They were a shield against the rest of the world, hiding the emotional carnage within. We had a rhythm that was the envy of our friends, or rather, the envy of anyone who only saw the surface. Sunday mornings were for tackling the week's groceries together, silent and coordinated, each knowing exactly which aisle the other was headed for. Midweek, he'd take the lead on dinner prep. He was an excellent cook, while I organized the bills and scheduled maintenance. We were an engine of efficiency, a testament to what two compatible people could achieve when focused on shared practical goals. This domestic synergy was my narcotic. I found myself constantly trying to calculate the cost of emotional pain against the value of this unparalleled stability. Could I trade this organized comfort for the terrifying, chaotic uncertainty of starting over? My mother certainly thought not. "Stay," she'd advised, her voice heavy with the weight of her own generation's values. He provides stability. Focus on the good he does. But the good was always conditional. I remember an argument, a quiet, surgical confrontation, not a messy scream fest, where I tried once again to bridge the gap between our two realities. It was about the sex workers, the paid services. I just don't understand the logic, I confessed, my voice tight. You have me. Initiate. I literally text you asking you to come home so we can have sex. Why would we pay for it, wasting our money, when I want you here? He looked away, studying a point just over my shoulder. It's different. It's a purely physical thing. It has nothing to do with you or us, he mumbled, the classic cheater's defense. But I saw the deeper offense. It is about us, I insisted. You cheat, and then you come home, and you won't even let me touch you. It's a deliberate distance. You're exchanging intimacy for a transaction, and then punishing me with the aftermath. His response was always a carefully modulated remorse. I'm sorry. It's just a moment of bad judgment. I feel terrible about it, he'd say, deploying the perfect words that sounded like sincerity, but offered zero evidence of action. The insidious part was the game of catch me if you can. My role as the investigator became normalized. I'd start my week not by planning work, but by planning my investigation. Checking his phone for hidden apps, subtly monitoring credit card statements, or watching his Instagram activity. The follow-unfollow cycle that I had told him to stop. I told him I was quitting that job. I told him I wouldn't do it anymore because I saw no genuine effort on his part. A few weeks after I announced my resignation as the chief investigator, I noticed him being overly dramatic about his phone usage. He'd scroll on Instagram, then make a show of unfollowing certain accounts, the enabling ones as I called them, and then hold the phone up for me to see the list. See, I'm working on it. I'm making an effort, he'd declare. His expression carefully earnest. I wanted to believe him. God, did I want to believe him? Then came the day the facade crumbled completely. I needed his phone for a mundane reason. Maybe to check a recipe or transfer a photo. I unlocked it, and a rogue notification led me down a path I had tried to avoid. I found the hidden folder. It wasn't just a sneaky place to dump photos. It was a curated digital archive of his deception. Inside I saw it. The very screenshots of the Instagram accounts he had unfollowed to show me he was working on himself. He hadn't unfollowed them at all. He had merely saved the proof of unfollowing to this secret vault. The public performance of accountability was a private act of concealment. But that was just the appetizer. Deeper in the phone's architecture, I discovered a hidden internet browser. A private, anonymous space where he would go to look at OnlyFans and similar content. It was an entire hidden world, meticulously segregated from the life we shared. It wasn't a moment of bad judgment. It was a system of continuous, intentional infidelity. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The remorse, the apologies, the promises, they were all tools. He wasn't struggling with infidelity. He was struggling with exposure. He had built a fortress of lies around the perimeter of our perfect home. He wasn't an imperfect partner. He was a master manipulator. He required my vigilance to validate his own efforts, turning our relationship into a psychological prison where I was the warden and he, the eternally defiant inmate. I retreated to the bathroom, the cool tiles against my back, the phone still warm in my hand. I looked at the hidden folder, the damning, undeniable proof. He was emotionally not a safe space, yet logistically, he was my perfect anchor. The choice was no longer about forgiving a flaw. It was about choosing to live with a perfectly functional, beautiful lie, or embracing the crushing loneliness of truth. And as I looked at the reflection of my own tired eyes, I realized I had to start. Part 3. The high price of synergy. The discovery of the hidden folder and the secret browser was the moment the scale tipped. It wasn't just infidelity. It was a deliberate, two-tiered life. My partner wasn't just a cheater. He was a spy operating within the borders of our home. This realization transformed my shock into a chilling, analytical resolve. I spent the next 2 weeks in a state of frightening, detached observation. We continued our domestic dance, shared cooking, coordinated bill payments, the perfect quiet synergy that had become my gilded cage. But now, every movement, every smile, every casual touch from him felt like part of his performance. I studied him the way a detective studies a suspect, searching for the telltale shift in his eyes, the micro-expressions that betrayed the careful sincerity of his words. I started analyzing the perverse psychology of the situation. Why was he so fiercely against me cheating or opening the relationship, yet so consistent in his own betrayal? I realized it wasn't about love or commitment. It was about control. His infidelity was a secret power he held, a private indulgence he could manage and conceal. My infidelity would disrupt his perfect domestic structure and, worse, challenge his sense of unique ownership over me. He demanded my absolute loyalty while demonstrating none of his own. The emotional disconnect became a chasm. I initiated sex, desperate for some authentic connection, some proof that the man I loved was still there. But he would often refuse, citing tiredness, stress, or coming up with some weak excuse. The refusal stung, but the knowledge of where his energies were actually going, to transactional, paid encounters or hidden digital spaces, was a slow-acting poison. Why pay for sex when you have someone at home who wants to have sex with you? Because the paid transaction wasn't about sex. It was about power, anonymity, and the thrill of the forbidden, which he could then use to push me away physically when he returned home, not letting me touch him. My external world offered conflicting advice, deepening my confusion. My mother's voice was the loudest echo. "Stay," she'd advised. "He runs the house well. He's stable. Focus on the good he does." She valued stability above my well-being, prioritizing the optics of a functioning life. But everyone else, my friends, my colleagues, the inner voice of logic, was unanimous. I should not stay. Leave him. He is making no effort. He expects you to hold him accountable, and that is not a partnership. It's a burden. I had already told him I was quitting that job. I would no longer do that. The core of the problem was laid bare. He was an amazing life partner, but he was not a safe space emotionally. We were roommates who excelled at shared logistics, but partners who excelled at mutual destruction. I finally initiated a conversation with him that wasn't about a specific betrayal, but about the structure of our relationship itself. "I need to talk about what we are," I began, sitting across from him at the kitchen island, our command center for domestic efficiency. He looked up from his tablet, immediately adopting a guarded, wary expression. "What is it, honey? Is something wrong with the bills?" "It's not the bills," I said, my voice dangerously even. "It's the foundation of trust. You lie about all the details until I bring them up. You act like you've done nothing or reserve all comments until you're directly addressed with the evidence. You make me do the work, and then you call it a moment of bad judgment." He sighed, the practiced sigh of a man who feels perpetually misunderstood. "I told you I express a lot of remorse. I am genuinely sorry after it happens. It's an impulse I struggle with. You know I want to change." "No," I cut him off, leaning forward. "I know you want to stop being caught. And I know you have a hidden folder on your phone with the screenshots of the accounts you claimed proved you were working on yourself. I know about the hidden internet where you would go to look at OnlyFans. This isn't a struggle, it's a system. You are actively maintaining a double life right here, in this perfect house." The air went dead silent. The mask of practiced remorse finally cracked, revealing a flicker of raw panic, quickly replaced by a cold, resentful anger. "You went through my phone again," he accused, flipping the script instantly to my violation of privacy, rather than his violation of trust. "Your phone is evidence of the state of our relationship," I countered, refusing to be drawn into his deflection. "I quit being your detective. I told you I am quitting that job. And I will not stay in a relationship where I am expected to manage your morality. I don't see him going the lengths I would to help myself." He started pleading again, the words rehearsed. Promises of therapy, promises of absolute change, promises to delete everything. But the discovery of his systematic deception had rendered his words meaningless. I saw the true weight of the situation. He wasn't resisting change. He was prioritizing his need for secretive infidelity over my emotional safety. He was sacrificing me for his habit. I started taking secret steps. The synergy had to be broken, piece by painful piece. I quietly contacted a lawyer, asking about the legal logistics of disentangling our shared finances and lease. I began moving essential documents to a safe deposit box. I had to maintain the illusion of the perfect roommate while preparing for the reality of separation. The man who was so great at logistics had, ironically, taught me to be equally meticulous in my escape plan. The end of the line was approaching, and I knew that to save myself, I had to dismantle the most comfortable, well-organized home I had ever known, and face the terrifying emptiness of a safe but solitary future. Part 4. The dismantling of the perfect machine. The silence after our final, cutting confrontation was the heaviest thing we owned. He continued his routine, maintaining the rigid facade of the perfect roommate, but the air between us was now razor-thin, vibrating with my silent, cold resolve. I was no longer a partner. I was an operative, carefully dismantling the beautiful, functional machine we had built. I knew that his deployment provided the ideal window of opportunity. He was preparing for another work trip, one I knew, with grim certainty, would involve a new bout of digital or physical indiscretion. This time I didn't feel dread. I felt a chilling sense of purpose. I was calm, terrifyingly rational, mirroring the very organizational precision I had once admired in him. My planning was meticulous. I used his detailed scheduling against him. Because we ran the house together so well, I knew exactly where every financial record, every spare key, every login was kept. He was so focused on the performance of domestic harmony that he never imagined I would use his own system against him. I had already secured my vital documents and discreetly set up a new bank account, moving the majority of the funds we had saved together. I left enough in the shared account to cover the next month's bills and rent, a clean, logical break, minimizing the chaotic fallout. I wanted the separation to be a logistical masterpiece, the kind he would appreciate, even as it destroyed him. The night before his departure, he made a final, clumsy attempt at intimacy, a weak gesture of connection that felt utterly repulsive. I recoiled. "Don't," I said, my voice low and firm. "It's over. I'm done with the pretending." He looked genuinely confused, his panic finally overriding his practiced composure. "What's done?" "The fight. We can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I swear I'll delete the folders. I'll stop." "The synergy is over," I interrupted, the words quiet but final. "The partnership. The cohabitation. I'm leaving while you are away." The words hit him harder than any accusation of cheating ever had. The infidelity was a game he understood. The loss of his perfect, functioning domestic life was a catastrophic, unexpected failure. His face went pale, a slow dread replacing the defensive anger. "You can't," he stammered, his eyes wide. "Who will manage the bills? Who will remember the insurance deadlines? Who will coordinate the house cleaning? We work perfectly. Your mom said you should stay." "My mom is wrong," I said, a finality in my voice I hadn't realized I possessed. "I am choosing emotional safety over domestic comfort. You were an amazing roommate, but you were never a safe partner. You taught me how important logistics are, and I've used those skills to organize my escape. I'm no longer volunteering to be the emotional anchor for your instability." I handed him a neatly typed document, the formal notice of termination of our cohabitation agreement, which I had drafted with the lawyer. It detailed the division of assets, the rent responsibilities, and the time frame for him to buy me out of the furniture we owned together. The finality of the logistics broke him more than the emotional rupture. "You're sacrificing us," he shouted, throwing his hands up in a gesture of betrayal. "Over a few texts and some videos. Over something purely physical. You sacrificed us the first time you chose to pay a stranger at an airport while texting me lies, I retorted, standing firm near the front door. You chose the hidden folder over my peace of mind. You chose your addiction to deceit over my worth. I am not sacrificing us. I am saving myself. I am ending my job as your accountability partner. He tried one last manipulation, a dramatic display of remorse, dropping to his knees. Please. I can't live without this. Without you, the house. The routine. I need you to keep me grounded. I just looked at him, seeing not the charming, regretful man, but the systematic liar behind the facade, desperately clinging to his comfort. You already lived without me, I said, opening the door. You just lived with a very accommodating roommate who cleaned, cooked, and covered your emotional blind spots. That service is no longer available. I left the next morning, leaving the keys and the typed notice on the kitchen counter, the altar of our failed synergy. I didn't look back at the perfect, organized apartment. I walked away from the scent of his cologne and the oppressive, silent perfection of our shared space. The weeks that followed were difficult but liberating. The silence in my new, small place was initially terrifying, heavy with the absence of our familiar routine. I had to learn to manage all the logistics myself. The cooking, the scheduling, the bills. It was chaotic, messy, and lonely at first. But it was safe. There were no screens to check, no hidden apps to search for, no lies to anticipate. I slept soundly for the first time in over a year. The emptiness was a pure, clean space, waiting to be filled with genuine happiness, not manufactured synergy. I was rewarded with my own independence, my sanity, and the knowledge that I had chosen truth over comfort. He was left with the logistics he valued so much, but without the emotional shield I provided. Through mutual friends, I eventually heard that his life had quickly spiraled into disarray. Bills were missed, the apartment grew messy, and the precision of his organizational skills dissolved without me there to mirror or manage them. He had to confront the true weight of managing a life without his perfect, emotionally invested co-pilot. He had to learn, too late, that synergy is a two-way street, and that a house built on lies will eventually collapse, no matter how clean the kitchen is. I was finally free, realizing that the perfect roommate had been the greatest trap of all. My new life was messy, but it was mine, and it was entirely safe.